This is the Rising Tide Startups podcast, where we chat with startup founders from all over the globe to help you escape the cubicle and begin your own startup journey. Make sure you take notes. Every episode of Rising Tide Startups is sponsored by Podbrand Media. Let Podbrand create and host your company branded podcast. Learn more at podbrandmedia.com. This is Kevin Prewett with Rising Tide Startups, and my guest today is Michael Tidwell. Michael, thanks for joining us on Rising Tide.
Hey, it's my pleasure, Kevin.
So Michael and I met, I'm guessing about a month ago, maybe on LinkedIn, just touch base. And man, I've already tried to make connections out of my network with him, and we just met virtually. So Michael, share a little bit about yourself with our audience.
Sure. I'm a dad, and I'm a husband as well. I have two teenagers and one young adult son. I love to hike and travel, new experiences. So in a nutshell, that's what I like to do. From a business angle, I wear two hats. I'm a business broker with Nashville Business Brokers here in Nashville. We sell businesses basically, but I also own an online business that I started in 2012. And the experience that I have with the online business has allowed me to start coaching as well other small businesses and online businesses. And what I coach them on is finding your unique value proposition. Because what I have found in owning an online business is that you can't really focus on price. It's just a race to the bottom.
Right.
But so you have to focus on something else to attract customers. So that is an area that I help other online businesses as well.
So 2012, that was fairly early days of, having an online business. I mean, it's kind of old hat now in 2024, but 12 years ago, what was kind of the impetus for getting started online, and what was that attract that carrot that brought you to the table there?
Well, I've always tried to start. I've started many businesses and they failed. In 2010, my wife and I built our dream home. And whenever you go to build a home, you continue to add things to it. So we just got way out of budget. And then at the same time in 2010, we had our third child. Our desire was for her to be home with our children. And it wasn't working out that way. I was working all the overtime I could. She was working. We had 3 small children. So I knew something had to give. So in 2012, I became really desperate. And one night I was looking on an online forum about starting businesses, and I came across a course. And it was only $20, but at that time, $20 was a lot of money for us. But I purchased the course, and unlike other times, this time I followed through. I had my first order in 2013, February 2013. And from that point on, I would work at night when the kids and my wife would go to bed. I would work to 2 or 3 in the morning to get up at 6 and go to work.
Yeah.
I knew that that was not something I couldn't do permanent. And that's when I started using VAs. And one of the VAs that I still use today, he's been with me for 10 years.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
It is. I think it's kind of one of the best known secrets, in the whole business space. And before we started recording today, I told Michael, I said, I'm kind of focusing Rising Tide Startups in the VA space, the virtual assistant space, for at least the first 6 months of 2024, because it is such a number one, a fascinating space. And number two, I think just really unknown, or if people know about it, they're kind of like, there's a fear element that says, man, I don't know how to really outsource. I don't trust it. I don't, how do you work with people overseas? That all these questions and, kind of obstacles in your mind. But tell me how you first even, number one, heard about it, and number two, you kind of got to the point you said, you know what, I'm going to take the leap and start utilizing virtual assistant services?
Well, I've always been someone that believes in delegating.
Hmm.
Uh, so
That's a
after
good
I
phrase.
had already used, I'd already used VAs prior to that, but not on a regular basis. So at that time, I went on, it's called something else back then, but it's Upwork now.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Odesk, maybe?
and I think so.
Yeah.
So I went on there and I found several. At first, they didn't work out. So what I started doing is instead of creating a public profile, I started going through all the VAs that had at least a 5-star. So I
Mm.
started kind of filtering through, and I started finding ones that was really that we could build a permanent relationship with, such as the gentleman I found in 2014. He's been a godsend
Mm-hmm.
in my business. He handles, once you build that relationship, you just trust him.
Mm-hmm.
And so I trust him with my business. And, I pay him comparable for his economy,
Mm-hmm.
but also I give him bonuses.
Yep.
I give him the opportunity to continue his education and I'll pay for it. So he's treated me really well. So I try to treat him really
Sure.
well.
And that's how
Mm-hmm.
people stick around. That's how
Yeah.
you retain good people. So tell me
Mm-hmm.
what were some of the services that you first started outsourcing, and then now what have you kind of grown toward, today?
I started out and I still utilize him for these services. I started out adding products,
Mm-hmm.
product descriptions.
Mm-hmm.
That can be very time consuming. And so he still does all that for me. Uh, I utilize another VA for blog post.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, she is in the same industry of the products that I sell.
Yep.
So she has a great knowledge about those products. So I use her for writing blog posts. I've used VAs to redesign my website. Uh, and like when I need something tweaked, I will use VAs. So I look at myself more as the team manager.
Mm-hmm.
What I focus on is just growing the business.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's can you go back to the book, The E-Myth, that
Mm-hmm.
talks about, stop working in your business and start working on your business. And it sounds like to me that
Oh
you've
yeah.
kind of gotten to that point. So what are some lessons that you learned kind of the hard way, using VAs? You're thinking, man, I wish I really messed up here. This I should have known better, but I trusted this, or I
Mm-hmm.
did this, or I went down this path and whatever. What are some lessons that you look back and you think, yeah, I know now, I know better now than to do that.
Oh yeah. One of the biggest lessons that I've learned is one example is a few years ago. It's been pretty recent actually. Is I had a VA managing my Google Ads,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't his fault. It was more my fault in the sense I didn't set the expectations
Mm-hmm.
of what I expected. And I did not do a great job at monitoring the reports each month.
Yep.
So after spending tens of thousands of dollars, I realized it wasn't as effective as I was hoping for. So I took that back and started doing it myself.
Mm-hmm.
Not that that can't be outsourced to a VA, but because I've leaned down my business, I felt like it was better served if I did it.
So, I mean, that seems to have a broader, application than just like Google Ads or whatever. It's the idea
Yeah.
that, you set good expectations, you give the VA a good understanding of what you expect, what you're going to
Mm-hmm.
do, what they're going to do. Have clear operating, guidelines or whatever, and, document processes and things like that. So, and that's one thing I've learned is that they operate really well
Mm-hmm.
if there's clarity,
Yes.
around the expectations, and they don't operate so well if you're just asking them to kind of guess what you're thinking.
Hmm.
that is certainly I think that's a recipe for disaster. I don't care who's working for you, you know,
Oh yeah,
or who
yeah,
you're working for.
yeah, and that's what I did. I just kind of assumed that they could read my mind.
Hmm.
But once you set those expectations and very clear on what you want accomplished, I have found VAs to be a lifesaver.
Oh, there's no, I'll give you a very quick, personal note here that
Uh
the
huh.
very first VA that I hired to help with the podcast production side of things.
Hmm.
And I got on the Zoom call with her, and we're like, okay, here's my process. And I started walking through the whole process, and we got about 10, 15 minutes into the call, and she was asking me questions, and she was pointing some things out in the process, and I said, you understand this better than I do, don't you? I said, so I tell you what, I'm going to send you my process. You improve it based on what you already know, and I will learn from you instead of me
Oh
teaching
yeah.
you. So I was like, I was just blown away at how gifted, this lady was at what
Hmm.
I thought, was kind of my space. But yeah, I
Yeah.
quickly learned that I don't have to teach her everything. Matter of fact, she teaches me more things than I teach her. So, but it
Oh
is
yeah.
clear. I mean, we've even learned. I've had. I guess I have tried to say, well, why didn't you do that thing? And she said, well, no, to be honest with you, you didn't ask me to do that thing. You asked me to do something
Right.
else. So I said,
Hmm.
hey, hands up. You are exactly right. You are exactly right. So yeah, I've had tremendously blessed by the virtual assistants that I've worked with online. I mean,
Hmm.
every one of them. And not that it's been perfect by any means, but I cannot imagine doing what we do without them. So what are
Hmm.
some success stories that you look back and you think, wow, this bringing this person on just kind of 2x'd my business or 5x'd my business or whatever that magic number is. But yeah, what's
Uh-huh.
what's kind of the story behind bringing somebody on and really seeing a positive impact?
I used a VA last year that I used him for a different purpose, but he had skill sets in several different um, he had several different skill sets.
Hmm.
And when he was looking at my website, he was like, some of your design stinks. I mean, it's not building trust with customers and
Hmm.
clients. So he helped me redesign it, and he guided me kind of like your story. He kind of guided me into what I needed to
Hmm.
do in order to even build more trust with
Yep.
my website and my shopping cart. So he was really, really a huge help, a great asset.
I think that's funny that when I brought her on to do one thing,
Uh-huh.
to be a VA in one tiny part of the process. And
Yeah.
by the time I got done, I mean, she can do anything I do and more. So
Hmm.
I there was by the time the first month was over, I mean, there was just a list of things that she had taken care of. And I'm thinking
Oh
I'm
yeah.
quickly becoming unnecessary in this business.
Yeah.
Which is a good
I'm,
place to good place to be for sure. But
oh, it is.
what are
It
I mean,
is.
you've run businesses, you run your own business. What are some generic lessons that you've learned in other than you kind of mentioned just be clear, have clear
Mhm.
expectations or whatever. What are some other general lessons that you think our listeners that want to work with VAs that would be very helpful for them, as they're kind of looking at their business processes and I mean, where do you even start? Like, what's the very first step in your mind that I'm a business, I'm starting to get a little traction online. I certainly know I need help in a number of different
Mhm.
areas. What is kind of step one? What's day one of considering, working with VAs?
Well, for me, I feel like Upwork is kind of the Wild West.
Hmm.
You got thousands and thousands of VAs to choose from, and if you're not careful, you can waste a lot of money.
Yeah.
Just kind of winging it. Uh, if I was starting all over, I would probably partner with someone that does it full time, kind of like filters VAs.
Hmm.
Uh, and I would start there and I would tell them what I'm looking for
Mm-hmm.
and let them go find the talent.
Yeah.
Because I do find when I started on Upwork 10, 12 years ago, it wasn't as crowded as it is
Mm-hmm.
now.
Yep.
So I mean, you can still, and I still use Upwork, but you can waste a lot of time and money.
Mm-hmm.
And especially now that there's specialty shops or boutique firms that will
Right.
help you find the right boutique VA for the service that
Right.
you're needing. So yeah, I would start with that.
If you're looking though at your business,
Mm-hmm.
how would you start thinking, okay, which of these 10 things I'm doing during the day, which one is the easiest to offload? Which one is the most beneficial to offload? Is it email processing? Is it lead gen? Is it web development? I mean, how did you determine which ones you were wanting to offload and which ones you think would, had the best maybe return on time?
I think most processes and projects can be offloaded to a VA. Uh, if you set those clear
Yeah.
expectations.
And find the right
I,
one,
I've
right?
Yeah, and find the right one. I'm trying to think. I can't really think of any process that I would not trust the right VA with, other than just creating new funnels of streams of income for my business.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because I enjoy that part, and I think that's also the part of being a business owner,
Yeah.
kind of leading.
Yeah.
Uh, but I have, it's not a VA, but I have a company. I don't even know where they're located that does my accounting, and they're using VAs
Mm-hmm.
because I deal with a VA in the Philippines for my accounting. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's 10 years ago, you would have never thought about
Yeah.
having a bookkeeper in the Philippines that's handling US taxes. But now it's just becoming the norm.
Mm-hmm. That that is, I mean, to me, when you start getting in the bank accounts,
Mhm.
that's where the trust level has to be really high. When you start
Right.
working on, the bookkeeping side of things, what caused you to look to the VA space for bookkeeping versus, say, just finding a local, accountant there in Nashville?
Well, let me back up. See, I hired a company kind of going back to finding like a boutique or
Mm-hmm.
a firm that handles VAs. The gentleman I work with that is the accountant, he lives here and he manages the VAs.
Oh,
So
okay.
again, it's finding that boutique
Yep.
and then they're offloading it to the VAs. Now it's him that I'm trusting,
Mm-hmm.
and it's him that has the 100 or so reviews, 5 stars.
Yep.
So I'm putting my trust in him
Yes. Yeah.
that he's filtered the right VAs.
Hmm. And I mean, he's
Mm-hmm.
probably, I'm guessing, checking, kind of the final reports before they come
Yeah.
in, the tax
Mm-hmm.
returns, monthly reports or whatever, but before you may
Right.
even see those. So what,
Mm-hmm.
just in general, let's talk about just running a business in general, not necessarily in the VA space, but if you're leading a team, you're building a successful business, what are one or two just generic lessons that you've learned, maybe even the hard way, that say, you know what, I don't care what your business is, here are two foundational principles that you've got to live by. You got to walk out, for this business
Mm-hmm.
to succeed. So in your mind, what would those be?
For me, I had to keep my why in front of me,
Mm,
especially when I was starting out. When you're under stress, like my wife and I were under financial stress, and we got 3 small kids, and we're wanting her to be home with them.
mm-hmm.
Desperation has a way to motivate you.
Absolutely.
So those nights when I first started, and it'd be 1 or 2 in the morning, and I felt like giving up. And at that point, I didn't have any success. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have anything to go by. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
this was just a shot in the dark. I mean, I had shot in the dark 15, 20 times before.
Mm-hmm.
But I would revisit many nights. I'd sit there and have my why on my desk, and I was doing it for my family.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you have to figure out your why, and your why has to be important enough to keep you driven, keep you committed.
Yep.
So that is my recommendation to anyone that is starting out. Craft your why and make sure your why is more important, that when you don't see success and things are not going the way you want them to, you can revisit that why and it will motivate you to keep walking, keep going on. So yeah.
You've had many times that, I mean, if you've started 10, 15, different things that either had a modicum of success or no success at all, you're thinking, what was the I guess the identifier in your mind that it was time to pivot? Like, you're thinking, okay, I started this, I tried it for 6 months, it's not going to work. Now I got to shift to something else. What is that like aha moment that says it's time to pivot to something else?
Part of it is my fault. And the reason why it's my fault is because a lot of those 10 or 15 times, I didn't give them time to mature. I shiny object syndrome. I would see another thing. And what I realized about myself is that I like the beginning of things. I like the newness of things. I like the excitement that it brings.
That's just an entrepreneur. That's a serial entrepreneur.
So maybe we need therapy.
There's a whole island of us out here somewhere. That's right.
I know. I have I call it the domain graveyard. I have a lot of domain names. There's a good idea behind that.
See my external drive I got over there. That's where domains go to die.
Go to die. And I never will get rid of them because you never know.
You just never know. Yeah. I can't sell that one. I may need that someday.
Yeah, you might need that. So I just think but this time around I was more desperate. And I think I mentioned this at the beginning. I had bought a course from a gentleman that for $20, and now he sells that same course for $4,000.
Wow.
But he had just started and he was looking for about 100 people to try it out. And I was one of the first. So this time around, instead of trying it my own way, I just followed his process because he was successful. And if he had been successful, I figured my best chance was just to follow what he did. And that would be my best chance at success.
And I mean, obviously it worked.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Like to me, there are two types of people out there selling courses. There's one that actually really did it well and has a process and thinks, I don't care. You can replace the product with about anything, and the process itself will work. There's others that sell the course because they're not successful running their own business. So obviously you found the A player instead of the B player,
That's
to
true.
follow.
That's true. There's a lot of the Bs.
There's a lot of B players out there for sure. Let's just wrap us up today. If you're speaking to my audience, you're speaking to our audience about, utilizing VAs in your business, how would you let's have a little mini coaching session here. I don't really know even where to get started. Sounds like a good idea. I'm starting to get a little traction here in my online business, but I've got it. I mean, I have receipts stacked up over here. I've got 10,000 emails in my inbox. I've got, I don't even know, I've got leads coming in that I can't even follow up on, that type of thing. So how would you coach me as, kind of a early stage, startup here that says, what, you need to utilize VA services. Here's kind of a process that you need to go through to do this well. How do you get started well?
Well, what I would recommend is just choose one process or one project. Let's use the example of adding products to your website, e-commerce. So I would choose that, and then I would also set a budget, and then I would just find a service or a company that offers that type of service, and reach out to them and go ahead and be very clear on what you're wanting, and then let them help you choose the right VAs. But I definitely would set a budget. I would only pick one project or one process at the beginning because it can become overwhelming.
Yep.
Sometimes there's challenges with understanding each other, different cultures. And so you have to work through all that. And but I have found that working through it is definitely worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And if the first one doesn't work out, don't give up, because the right VA can just really propel your business. Like the gentleman that helps me a lot, we have such a great relationship now. I can send him any project. I don't have to worry about it.
Right.
And I don't have to write 10 or 15 steps because we've worked together so long that he understands now what I want. Mm-hmm. And I can send it to him, and then I can move on to the next project. So what I spend more of my time now, instead of doing projects, not only so much for him, but for other VAs that I utilize, is once a week or so, I will go ahead and write down the projects that I want completed that week, mm-hmm. and go ahead and write the steps and then send it to the VAs. So yeah, I would just start there. Don't try to have 4 or 5 projects going on at a time. They'll get overwhelming. Yeah. And then if you have bad experiences, it might shade your view on using a VA.
Right. What great advice. What a way to wrap up today, and just, kind of get started slow but get started. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, get started and measure, what you want to, you want to see the results, measure those, and give you a good idea. And don't be discouraged if it doesn't work out the first time, because how many business steps are you taking that might be a half a step backwards, to make 2 forward. So mm-hmm. what a great way to wrap us up today, Michael. Hey, appreciate you taking time today and really sharing your expertise and your experiences with virtual assistants. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be so helpful to our audience, that are considering, how do I get a VA involved in our in these processes. And I like the idea of saying, let's start with a firm that actually operates full time in the VA space, that provides, vetted virtual assistants. And it's right in line with our sponsor, Navicus.com. That is one of those services that provides that. So Michael, thanks again. Appreciate the time. Welcome. Hope you have a great week, and just thank you for playing your part in helping all boats rise in a rising tide. Have a good day, buddy.
Great. Pleasure to talk to you, Kevin. Have a good one.
I hope you heard some great takeaways from our guests today. Make sure you reach out to them, and thank you again for playing your part in helping all boats rise in a rising tide.